A simple koan. Chapter 4. The mind is a mysterious place. Deep within it we can find shadows, an ever-present darkness that crowds out who we are, who we want to be. It is often a stranger, especially to ourselves. The deep destructive presence that demands to be known, if only in our dreams. Heaven and hell are unleashed through it, like a colossus of unyielding torment. Torment that extends to our immeasurable bliss and horror. Torment that creates who we are. Saul had fallen. He had become a pariah, even to himself, despising what he was, but not knowing where to turn. The gods that he had turned loved and hated had grown estranged to him. The game that he so wanted to end, had ended with him completely unprepared. Losing his first job due to his unyielding arrogance, Saul had reached a breaking point. Looking up at the ceiling, past the illusionary matter that be, he looked up to the face of his childhood God and exclaimed, "I don't need you. I don't want you in my life anymore." Then looking down past the blasphemous ground, down to the deepest core of the earth, he exclaimed to the God who would never be, "I don't need you. I don't want you in my life. Give me your best shot." The fool that he was, Saul had challenged the powers that had torn him apart for all his living memory. It did not fall on deaf ears. The Saul of the Bible didn't even have the hubris of our hero. Our Saul had come to this fight with empty hands, without the fear and trepidation that would arise in a wiser man. Saul, like his biblical counterpart, had fallen upon his own sword. Unlike the Saul of the Bible, however, our Saul didn't have the common courtesy to kill himself. But our Saul's death, the death of the Spirit, was profound and unimpeachable. The monster within himself had run loose upon the Valhalla of his soul. A warrior only in his mind, he had picked a fight with powers he did not yet understand. Those powers accepted his challenge and gave the now 20-year-old a taste of their wrath. Understanding often only comes through pain and sorrow. Soon, the powers that be would no longer be a mystery to this young man. It was a cold shower that fell on his southern town that day. He had been smoking weed on his back porch when the call came. Well toasted, Saul answered the phone and spoke with his mother. She told him that she and her dad were stranded at a local restaurant. The car battery was dead. Not taking the time to consider how very much he was out of the normal thought process required to operate his car, Saul drove to the restaurant to rescue his parents. The sun shining brightly again. The slick streets glistened in the sun as he set out. It was a beautiful day again. Saul was elated. Helping his parents out, Saul tried to hurry back to his house. He wasn't sure that he had put up all his drug paraphernalia, and his parents were right behind him. Rushing home on slick streets, with his old car's bare tires, turned out to be a profound foolishness for this young man. Having turned onto a road that had a deep ditch on the right side, Saul suddenly found himself a few feet off the road. The grass on the incline did not accept the laws of friction. Saul was suddenly in a predicament. His car just refused to get back on the road. Now wanting to drive his car into a ditch, he tried unsuccessfully to get his car back on level ground. Then he saw it. An angry, savage monolith of terror. Briefly, and without comprehension, Saul recognized a telephone pole coming into his view. Reacting too late, he hit the brakes. His car slid passenger side first into the unmovable object. Karma had reached its balance. It is cliché, however true, that these things happen in slow motion. Having taken the pole on without his seatbelt, Saul slid into the stick shift with his right leg. His right arm went through the windshield, and his chest bent the steering wheel on his right side. As quickly as the slow-motion accident started, it stopped. Saul, along with the car, fell into the ditch. Looking around in his now destroyed car, he was in shock. What had happened? He had been in an accident. Was he hurt? He couldn't feel anything. His body was numb. Not being able to move his right leg, and seeing an open wound on his right arm that was deep into the muscle, he knew this was serious. Saul's dementia was unfortunately brief. Oh, the blissful endorphins he was feeling would not last. He suddenly became aware of what had happened, aware of the pain. He knew that if he gave into his instinct to pass out, it would be the last time he would see this earth. Fighting the pain, he kept himself from slipping into blissful darkness, slipping into the void. He would later find out the extent of his injuries in the hospital. Broken leg, femur, fractured ribs, punctured lung, multiple lacerations to his right arm. The pain was excruciating and far from over. Saul would experience pain that the human mind was never meant to conceive a few days later. But first, this intrepid young man would have to face down the demons that he had summoned. Looking into the darkness of his soul, Saul found himself in the netherworld, between life and death. Here he would make his peace, if not his conciliation, with the devil. Deep in his mind, Saul would learn how to dispense of who he had become. A very good shot indeed, but hardly the devil's best. It was only 2 days in the hospital when it happened. When you break a large bone, the femur being the largest in the body, there are often complications. The marrow in the bone, being essentially fatty tissue, can sometimes find its way into the bloodstream. This can cause cardiac arrest, instantly kill you with a heart attack. This is what the doctors would later claim happened to Saul. The fatty tissue, however, did not go to Saul's heart. Instead, it went to his brain. It is difficult, if not impossible, to explain the new world Saul found himself in for almost 3 days. A world created by his mind. A mind that had decided to dispense its justice upon Saul. Those things, his misgivings about himself, a denial of who he truly was displayed for all to see. The tragedy that was his life became open fodder for everyone to mock and belittle. Everyone he had ever known, his friends, his enemies, could see plainly into his soul. Now he was stripped naked before the world. The monster he was became the subject of everyone's scrutiny. He fought only against himself in those hours of this nightmare world. He wasn't a good man, and now he had to answer for it. The lies, the deception that had become such a big part of his life were now laid bare. In this he learned himself, a mirrored image of a fallen hero, afraid even for his life, as those who knew him now assembled as a massed mob of retribution. As the hours went by, the frightened Saul took stock of his life. Through the fearful shadows it rose. He learned something his arrogant conscious mind could never have taught him. In those hours, the young man learned to beg forgiveness to those who had truly hurt. He learned to ask his childhood God to forgive him of his trespasses, something he still refused to do for himself. When he awoke again on the hospital bed, Saul, desperate struggle with himself was over. He had looked into his soul and had found it severely wanting. No longer afraid of his past, but not knowing if he had any future, he would again so desperately cling onto what tiny shreds of self-respect he still had. The trial of his spirit, for now, over. The unimaginable pain of his body still to come. Due to his embolism, his surgery for his leg would not be standard fare. The problem was that Saul had slipped out of consciousness right after he received a shot of painkiller. As a result, he would not be allowed to just sleep gracefully after his surgery. They would have to give him a local anesthetic for the operation on his leg, and the doctor told him he would wake up right after. They would place a metal rod inside of his leg, about a half an inch thick. It would be extremely painful, the doctors warned, and he would not be allowed the sweet relief from pain for about an hour. The blood in his system would have to circulate first, before they could give him any medication, the doctor making sure that another embolism wasn't possible. As doctors often do, the term severe pain was understated. The hour after surgery would be the worst Saul had ever experienced. The pain of having a 2-foot rod placed in his leg and then sewn up would make any pain he ever experienced, and perhaps ever will, a pale reflection. The pain totally encompassed him. He lost all understanding of where he began and the pain stopped. The pain did not become a part of him, but rather he became part of the pain. Every evil deed the young man had done was now being accounted for in that hour. Karmic justice would again inflict its blows. Saul was in the hospital for another week after surgery. When he left the pain of those days behind, he left not really knowing who he was anymore. Now truly on his own, too afraid to even beg for his God's forgiveness, a boy still, struggling to be a man. He had turned a page, and for the first time, but certainly not his last, he would start again with nothing. He would pursue his dreams of acting and writing 1,000 miles from his home, desperate and alone. It would be his first attempt at becoming a man. He would fail miserably.